Good morning, my Blackberry subscribers. Today I am fixing to make some Ezekiel bread. So the last day or so we've had a pretty decent amount of rain that has moved in. It's pretty chilly outside. It's like 38 degrees outside. When we woke up this morning it was like 45. The temperature is going to do nothing but drop. So today is kind of an inside day, and thinking about supper tonight, what we need to eat. I wanted to make some Ezekiel bread because Ezekiel bread is, in and of itself, it's almost like a meal. It's very, very dense bread, and I have some leftover stuff that needs to be eaten up and combined with some Ezekiel bread and a side dish or whatever. This will be a really, really good meal. I have this. This is just a Mylar bag that I was able to vacuum suck and seal. I don't know if you can see this, but it is marked 12 of 10. It's December of 19 now, so this has been in storage like this for 9 years. This is one of the nice things about having whole grains that you can store. Think about in the Bible, Joseph in the famine in Egypt, that they had 7 fat years and 7 lean years. The very first fat year, they would have consumed those grains 8 years later. Okay, so if they did like a first in, first out method. So this is 9 years old, kept in a Mylar bag, Ziploc sealed, all the air taken out of it, and climate controlled all these years. So this should be perfectly fine. This was a mix that I had bought of Ezekiel bread. You don't have to do this though, because the recipe is actually in the Bible. So I'm going to read this to you, and I want you guys to think about it, because you can buy Ezekiel bread in the grocery stores. They actually sell it. It's very expensive. It's like $6 or $7 a loaf. But if you open up your Bible in Ezekiel 4:9, it says, "Take thou also unto thee wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and spelt, and put them in one vessel, and make thee bread thereof, according to the number of the days that thou shalt lie upon thy side, and even 390 days." So it was over a year that he was going to be eating just this. "And thou shalt eat thereof." A little bit further down it says, "And thou shalt eat it as barley cakes." Okay, so let's back up to what is actually in it. It says wheat. Back in Ezekiel's time, I'm not 100% sure what kind of wheat. I do know that it's kind of like everything old is new again. There's a grain called kamut, K-A-M-U-T. It was actually some grains that were recovered from an Egyptian tomb, that someone was able to take it and grow it. It's like thousands of years in suspended animation, and it germinated, and they have a crop. You can actually purchase it. It's kind of expensive. I've had it. It's a very long staple wheat, like well over an inch. It's kind of a golden color. It's nutty sort of tasting. It's good. So as far as wheat goes, I don't know. They don't say red wheat. They don't say white wheat. Just wheat, because my guess is there was probably only one really kind of wheat at that time. I don't know if it was kamut or not, but if you've never heard of kamut, you might want to look that up if you wanted to actually follow the recipe that is in the Bible. Barley, you can get barley. That's fairly easy. Beans. In my mix probably has like pinto beans and red beans. I'm pretty sure those were not what was in the beans that were in the Middle East at the time. Those are more, I believe, of a European or an American plant. Beans in the Middle East were probably more like fava beans, F-A-V-A beans. You can find them. They're harder to find. They're not as commonly found in like the local Walmart, maybe Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or something like that. Online, for sure, you should be able to find some. So you may want to try and look up what specific kind of beans were available at that time. There may be other ones, but fava is very, very popular in the Middle East. Lentils are common. You can get like red or green. Again, it doesn't specify. Millet's a little bit harder to find, but you can find it. and spelt. Spelt is a little bit harder to find. That's actually one of my favorite grains of all of the grains that I have cooked with. And I've used my grinder and made different kinds of breads, red wheat, white wheat, a mixture of the two, but just spelt is really, really good. And then it says to cook them like barley cakes. I'm not sure what barley cakes are. My guess is almost like a pancake, but I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't say anything about adding yeast. It doesn't say anything about adding sugar or salt or anything like that. So I'm not sure. Maybe this was supposed to be like an unleavened type of a bread. Maybe this was supposed to be a leavened bread. I don't know. But generally speaking, the way people do it now, the interpretation of it now, is a yeast bread that looks sort of like sandwich bread. You can play around with it as you see fit. What I'm going to be making today is going to have yeast in it, and it is going to make a risen loaf. But I will probably at some point try this and make it almost like into I've had buckwheat pancakes. It kind of seems like it might be something like a buckwheat pancake, but I'm not sure. So anyway, the mix, I'm gonna go ahead and open this, and if you can see it, looks perfectly fine, smells perfectly fine. This is a mix that I believe is from this book. I had got this years ago. It's called Bread for Life. And their mix has hard red wheat, spelt or rye, barley, millet, lentils, great northern beans, red kidney beans, and pinto beans. But like I said, this is one person's interpretation of it. Beans is probably whatever kind of bean maybe you want. So anyway, I've got this. I'm going to dump it into my grinder. And put my lid on. And then we're going to turn this on. It gets very loud. I'll pause the video until I'm done because it's obnoxious. Hey, I am back. So a couple things I wanted to show you. First thing is this is the ground wheat. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see that, but you should be able to see like there's different colors. Let me try and turn this light on and see if it makes a difference. It might wash it out. This is pretty strong light. Okay, so you can see how there's kind of like some areas where it's darker and then other areas where it's lighter. That's the difference between the endosperm, the white flour, and then the bran and the stuff that's like fiber, basically. So this is why grinding it will give you whole wheat. When they have white flour, they separate this stuff out. This is also the dark stuff, the bran and everything that's in it. This stuff can go rancid fast. This is one of the reasons why keeping the actual grain on hand is better than having the whole wheat that's already ground, because even if it's ground and you put it in the freezer, it's not going to last for 9 years. Okay, so the next thing is the water and sugar and yeast. You can see it's frothy. That's one of the things that you want to do is basically make sure that the yeast becomes active. So I have all my liquid, and the other thing I wanted to show you is I just keep a jar of, it's like a 2-pound brick I get at Costco. Keep it on in the freezer. If you buy like the little, let me turn that bright light off because it's kind of too much, I think. If you buy like the small little packages of Fleischmann's yeast, they're terrible. They don't work very well, I don't think. I don't know, because they're just not sealed. Like when you buy the 2-pound brick, it's vacuum sealed. It's kind of like that Mylar bag that I had cut open before. It's sealed. You put it in a jar container like this. You put it in the freezer. It basically keeps the yeast dormant. And I've had this for years now, and it still works. It's proofed. Okay, when it froths like this, it's called proofed. So you know it's proved that it's actually active and it's going to work in your bread. And buying the bricks at like Sam's or Costco, wherever you might buy them, are really not expensive. They're pretty inexpensive, particularly when you live in a place like this where you kind of are out of the beaten path, and if you bake your own stuff, you'll be surprised how much flour and sugar and yeast and all that stuff that you burn through in a given month or year. Okay, so now the last thing I want to mention to you is my mixer. This is an Electrolux. When I first started learning how to bake breads, I had always wanted to learn how to bake breads, but I didn't know how to do it. I tried. I failed miserably. They were hockey pucks, you know, you break your teeth on it. And that was just store-bought, all-purpose flour. It was awful. So somebody in my community was going to be offering a how to bake bread, but not only how to bake bread, but how to bake whole wheat bread, which I knew was healthier than white bread. So this was the method that she used. There's a little bit more equipment that's involved, like the grinder and a mixer. The thing about the mixers is this: if you have a KitchenAid mixer, which is what I had at the time when I first started learning how to do this, and everybody warned me, they said, your KitchenAid mixer is not strong enough. And people are like, pshaw, it's a great mixer. I love that mixer. It works, except for these whole grain type recipes, because of the extra bran and the gluten that's in them. You have to have something that literally has horsepower. The KitchenAid mixers don't. Okay, so the two number one brands that we were told about was this Electrolux. They are now, I want to say, called Anascarum. Same thing, only they rebranded it for whatever reason. And then the other thing is Bosch, and that's this is Swedish, and Bosch is German. This one has metal gears. The Bosch one had plastic gears. That was one of the main reasons why I chose this one over the other one, because I had such a difficult time with my KitchenAid. I literally saw the thing walking across the counter because it was struggling so badly trying to mix my bread, and this does it like it's nothing. So let me go ahead and pour my flour in without making a total mess. And that might not be possible. Not possible. It's only because I'm on camera. Definitely want to scrape as much of this in. This will be like a cake-like batter when it's done. It's not going to look at all like regular bread that you can pick up and you can knead. It will be very, very, very liquid. All right. Now, let's go ahead and start this on low. And I kind of just pulse it a couple times because it'll back up. In fact, let me go ahead and see if I can pull this off and show this to you. I like to kind of just move this around sometimes so that it will incorporate better. Turn up the speed. that's really about it. You just need to get it wet. So let me go ahead and get my baking pan set and we'll be ready to cook this. Okay, so now we have everything basically set up. I did forget one last little thing is when this was mixing, I needed to add 2 teaspoons of salt. I did not know this when I was first learning about baking, is that salt is your control for yeast. So anytime you have a yeasted bread, majority of the time they're going to call for salt to help cut back the yeast growth. You don't want it to go completely away, but if you just let it go unchecked without the salt, it'll just bubble over and you'll have a mess. So salt is important. And then from here, I'm going to clean off. This is a nice little part of this mixer. It's a scraper that's built in, so it helps really to kind of incorporate stuff as it's mixing. And I'm going to detach my roller and take this whole thing out, so you guys might be able to see a little bit better, and remove that. So this is the actual bowl, and this is the roller part. It comes with a nice little paddle that actually fits into each corner or groove here, so that you can really clean this off quite nicely. I had stopped for a few minutes because it was actually snowing outside for a little while. It's not sticking at all, but we've had all this moisture in the air and maybe some lingering parts of the storm that are coming, and it's snowing a little bit. The ground is not nearly cold enough for it to stick at this point. Okay, oven's preheated. At this point, I've got my 2 glass loaf pans, and then just as evenly as you can scrape nicely with this too. You're just gonna put it fairly evenly in your loaf pans. Does a pretty good job of getting everything out. Like I said, this is fairly cake-like consistency. And one of the things that I didn't tell you in the beginning when I had cut open that Ezekiel Bread packaging was that when I followed that recipe that I was telling you, it was from that book, Bread for Life, that I had this mix, and based on how many cups that she had of each, wheat, millet, whatever, that I calculated how many cups that totaled out to be, and then I took the mix and I just individually packaged each cup worth for that recipe, and all I had to do was add the liquid. So it kind of made things a little bit more convenient. And then from here, going in the oven. And about 45 minutes later, it will be done, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, and so here it is. The bread is done. We just test it, and it does come out perfectly clean. No residue. I got a little bit sidetracked with what I was doing because it has decided to snow quite heavily. So this is why we're doing indoor activities today. It's beautiful. It's not really sticking or anything like that, but we got some pretty decent size snowflakes. It was coming down so hard before that it was almost like a mini whiteout. You really couldn't see very far, but enjoy it while we can. All right, talk to y'all later, and remember, you all are the gold.